Hi, listeners, and welcome to My Holland Update. I'm Marianne Manderfield, Public Relations Coordinator for the City of Holland, and today our guest is Keith Van Beek, our City Manager. Welcome back, Keith.
Yeah, good morning, Marianne. Great to be here.
Yeah, this is your second one. You kicked off our very first podcast.
Yeah, I've been able to assign it to some of our other team. Nobody wants to hear me talk every time.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but we'll get right to it. So today we're going to kind of talk about 2019, planning for Holland, how that process takes place. And it really kicked off on Saturday with City Council at their advance.
Yeah, the advance that Council does every year. And I always get this question, so I'll cover this first. We call it the advance, and really it's because I think there were some on Council a few years ago that didn't like a retreat. It sounded, I guess militarily you retreat from something, so they wanted instead to advance. So it's the retreat, the advance, whatever you want to call it, but it's our opportunity for Council to take a look at data and really set the future priorities for the City of Holland.
Okay, and they were there for the better part of the day, and they did this at the Civic Center. So kind of walk us through that process.
Yeah, it's really a good process. I think they've continued to tweak it, and I've taken some new ideas to it also as our new city manager. So earlier in the month already, we gave them lots of data and information from the various departments of the city. And then when we got together last Saturday at the Civic Center place, we were there for about 6 hours. And we started with some things that you would expect us to start with. We talked about the vision and the mission and the value statements of the city. And we did a SWOT analysis, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Sure.
And then Council went through a process where they talked about what they felt the priorities were for the city moving forward. And really we did that in just asking the basic question: what does the city need to get done in the next year to 5 years? So we'll use that and lots of great conversations. But then Council did use one of those sticker exercises with numbers on them. So we basically came to a greater understanding and agreement on what particular items that we're going to work on moving forward.
Because it started out with quite a few. And then you try to narrow that down to be realistic and set what's priorities and what needs to really happen.
Exactly. As city manager and for kind of our leadership team, there were 60 items, I think, roughly that were put down.
Wow. That's a lot.
So there's lots of different things.
Sure.
And sometimes, we pair this also with our budget. So when you take a look at, we can't do all things and be all things to all people.
Right.
But what we really want to do is we want to be really strategic in the resources that we have as a city, both in terms of money, but also in time. So that we pared down those 60 to kind of the top items that Council felt we needed to work on. So my assignment now is to take all of that information and to put that into a specific business plan that we'll have moving forward. And that business plan then will mirror the budget that we adopt for fiscal year 2020.
Okay.
So later in April, May, Council will consider the budget that I put together. And then the budget should reflect the priorities that Council talked about on Saturday.
Okay. So this is really the time frame when yourself and the leadership team kind of dig down and figure out and put cost to everything and what's doable, what needs to come first.
Yeah, so we take a look at all things. Some things that come up are relatively simple in terms of maybe it's not a big cost item. Maybe it's something that, we can do in a relatively short time frame. And then some items are like large, and there's no way that it's going to get done in one fiscal year. But we break it up in bite-sized pieces. So maybe next year we'll do an evaluation of something.
Okay.
And then we talk about it, and I'll put forward kind of a timeline of that. This initiative might take 3, 4, 5 years to complete.
Okay. So is this something that once the budget is completed that the citizens would be able to see?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually we break it up into bite-sized pieces too, where it will be reflected in the budget, but the business plan itself will be a standalone document that council will also adopt separately.
Okay.
And then we'll also put that in, I think, a user-friendly format
Right.
that people will be able to understand what our business plan is for the city.
Okay.
And then my intention is also we'll give quarterly updates, not only to council, but that also will be available to the public so they know how we're doing and making progress towards the priorities that we've established.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like a very smooth process, long, lots of work behind the scenes involved in that, on top of everything else that you're doing day to day.
Absolutely. It's a process, and I've talked to council about this. This is a process that I learned and helped develop and fine-tune when most recently I worked for Ottawa County for the last several years.
Okay.
And we just found that this was a really good process to tie together the thoughts of council, who is in contact with the community, to understand what the needs are and the priorities are of the community, and then to make sure that we're tailoring the activities of the city and the budget of the city to really target those priorities.
And it's a working document, so at the end of the fiscal year, it doesn't stop and go away. It continues and flows into then the following year.
Exactly. So next year when we do that same advance process, what we'll do is we'll have a final report on the business plan that we had for this past year. At that point this past year.
Right.
And then what we'll do is we'll say, okay, what still isn't completed, what is completed, and then we'll kind of do a reassessment, and then we start the process all over again. So you can expect that in future years we'll have a business plan for every fiscal year that we enter into.
Well, what were some of those top priorities? We know there's some that are big projects that are already out there, downtown or Holland waterfront being one of those, and the housing policy, right, is kind of out there.
Yeah, so we had a great conversation as council to understand. That was one of the discussions we had is, okay, we have certain things that are still very much alive and ongoing, and we didn't want to step away from those things. Those are going to continue. So those will still be in the business plan. So Waterfront Holland, there's a great process that continues there. Listeners can find out more information about that at waterfrontholland.org.
Okay.
The housing policy that we're dealing with and talking about with council, with the organization Housing Next, still is very much alive and well. So we're progressing through that.
Okay.
And that deals not only with just housing at all levels, but in particular, there's a component there about affordable housing. So we're continuing to work very diligently on that process. And then we also have some great video. I know that our video department has put together on the waste characterization audit.
Yes.
So there's a task force that will be working on that already in the coming year to take a look at how we can evaluate our current recycling program, but also take a look at possibilities to increase the amount of recycling that we're doing and divert that from going into the landfill.
And they can find that video is currently up on the front page of our website. So if they want to find out more about that, they can watch the video and understand that, and then also find the findings of that report.
The videos are great, aren't they?
They are.
The picture's worth 1,000 words, and I guess a running video is worth 10,000 words or something.
Right.
But it really just captures what happens and describes the process very well. So I really encourage people to go out and check it out.
Sure. Okay. So other than those three big ones that have already kind of been out there, what were some of those other top ones that came up on Saturday?
Yeah, so there were 4 particular things that kind of topped the list in the discussion for council. One of those was downtown development.
Okay.
We certainly have, and that incorporates also the Waterfront Holland process.
Okay.
When you think about downtown not just being the 8th Street strip,
Right.
but
right.
really kind of the greater downtown. So there's opportunities for development and redevelopment there. So council, they gave me an assignment, right, to
Yeah,
continue
sure.
to work towards downtown development. There was also a lot of talk about our finances and the tax base, making sure that we can continue to have a solid and in fact a growing tax base, so we can provide all the services that we're asked to provide by residents for the city.
Sure. And that's essential.
Exactly. So and there's a lot of things that goes into that. Obviously, we've
sure.
got redevelopment potential right now. We are rewriting our zoning ordinance, our UDO process,
Yes.
Unified Development Ordinance. So there's a lot of components that go into that the city's working on right now, but it really falls under kind of that greater goal that council said, hey, this is really important.
Okay. And last two you said.
Yeah, great. So infrastructure was a big one. I think that's probably well known to our listeners that there's a lot of conversations about taking care of our roads and water systems and our parks and our buildings. So there's definitely a focus to make sure that we're not only taking care of needs of today, but we're making sure that we're investing for the future and making sure that we're taking care of the infrastructure that we already have. And then the final thing, there was a lot of talk about regional partnerships, just a desire to make sure that we're being good neighbors to our other neighboring entities in the cities, townships, and the county, but also with like nonprofit partners. We had a great partnership here in this last year that I think was a subject of a podcast with the Outdoor Discovery Center.
Yes.
Where we're jointly managing. They're managing the DeGraff Nature Center.
Right.
So council is interested in us continuing to be good regional partners.
And just using the assets from everybody around us, we can be stronger, all of us together that way.
Most of the large issues that confront us, as a region, don't care about the boundaries that we're in.
Right.
So certainly just continuing to lean in. There's always differences between us. There's always, not a loss of identity or anything, but we definitely can work together and collaborate better. So council, again, they gave us an assignment to continue to lean into that and explore more partnerships.
Okay. Well, those sound big. Obviously, lots of time, a lot of forethought, thinking involved for you and the leadership team to take back to. And what would be the next step that citizens could see something from this, or where would we direct them to? Probably the website.
Yeah, so I think there's probably not going to be a lot on the business plan until we bring that back to council for approval.
Sure.
So in the next couple months, we'll be putting a draft business plan together.
Okay.
But all of the departments, and especially the finance department, is actively putting our budget together now for fiscal year 20.
Okay.
And again, for those, just a reminder, our fiscal year runs from July 1 through June 30 of each year. So when I say fiscal year 20, that begins on July 1 of 2019.
Yes.
So somewhere April and May, we'll be having conversations with council, and then we'll ultimately adopt not only the budget, but also the business plan that we've talked about this morning.
Okay. Well, thank you, Keith. That's a lot of information, a lot of pre-planning down the road. April, we'll look for that spring, later in the summertime.
Yeah, we're excited. It's the nuts and bolts of the work that we do here as a city. So to have that partnership with the mayor and council and really have that direction is great. So we're looking forward to bringing a finished plan together for council for approval.
Good. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And until next month, this is my Holland Update.